A teacher has prepared a test for 2 of her students. One kid is very clever and the other kid is a bit slow, to say the least. The test has 10 questions and the teacher sits both kids down in the classroom and gives them 45 minutes to complete the test. Once completed by the students, the test papers are sent away for an independent assessment. When the teacher receives the marked test papers back, she looks at the slow kid's marks first. He's been given 9 out of 10. That's astonishing, the teacher thinks to herself. She then looks at the clever kid's mark and he too has been given 9 out of 10. That can't be right, thinks the teacher. So she goes through the clever kid's paper. The first 9 questions he's got right. For the 10th question he's simply written, "Sorry ma'am, but I don't know the answer." The teacher then goes through the slow kid's paper and again he's got the first 9 questions right. And then for the 10th question he's written, "I don't know either." A chemist, a biologist, and a mathematician are sitting in a cafe, looking out of the window. They all watch 3 people walk into a house across the road. After 20 minutes, only 2 people leave the same house. The scientists are very confused about what has happened. The measurements varied, and therefore the measuring equipment was likely inaccurate, declares the chemist, which makes the result of the investigation inconclusive. Nonsense, says the biologist. The population decreased due to external pressures. Natural selection acted and the weaker individuals were removed from the gene pool. The mathematician starts to laugh. "You fools! You've got it all wrong," he says. "There must have been -1 people in the house to start with." An American and a Chinese man are talking in a cafe. They're engaged in a debate over their 2 systems of government. The American says, "Look, our system might not be perfect, but we have freedom." The Chinese man asks, "Freedom to do what?" The American responds, "Well, for one, I can go down to Washington, D.C., walk up to the president's desk, and say, 'Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running your country.'" The Chinese man thinks for a moment, and retorts, "I can do that too." "Oh, really?" replies the American, skeptical of the Chinese man's claims. "Yeah," says the Chinese man. "I can go down to Beijing, walk up to the chairman's desk, and say, 'Chairman, I don't like the way Donald Trump is running his country.'" A married lady goes to her doctor for her annual checkup, and everything is good. In her conversation at the end of all the tests and examinations with the doctor, she expressed a concern about her husband. "As you know, I raise champion golden retrievers, and one evening I was making their food. I had a big pot on the stove simmering, and my husband came home, got a mouthful full and ate it. I told him it was for the dogs. He said it was delicious and insisted that was what he wanted for dinner that night. Well, I make the dogs food every week, and every time I make a new batch, my husband eats it for dinner. I'm concerned about him eating the dog's food." The doctor proceeded to ask her what was in the dog's food and how it was prepared. After she describes in detail the ingredients and the preparation, the doctor says, "I don't think there is anything that can hurt him. I wouldn't encourage him to eat it, but it sounds safe enough to eat." A year goes by, and the woman goes back to the doctor for her annual checkup. As is standard procedure, the doctor sits down with the woman and discusses the test results. As he is going through her file, he sees a note from the previous year regarding her husband's propensity to eat the dog food made by her. He asks her, "So is your husband still eating the dog food you prepared?" "Oh, no, doctor, my husband died." "Oh, my lord, I'm so sorry. It wasn't because of the dog food, was it?" "Well, not directly, no." "Not directly? What happened?" "Well," the lady said in a very sad and grief-stricken voice, "he got hit by a car when he was sitting in the middle of the road licking his balls." 4 roommates get drunk the night before an exam and they miss the test. They go to the professor with a story that they got a flat tire on their way to take the exam and they beg for the chance to take a makeup exam. The professor agrees. On the day of the makeup test, all 4 students show up right on time. The professor looks at his watch and says, "Begin." The students open their exam books and there's only one question. Which tire went flat? A man is convinced his wife is going deaf, but she won't admit it. So he decides to test his theory once and for all. While she's standing at the sink, he stands about 6 steps behind her and says, "What's for dinner, dear?" When there's no answer, he steps a few steps closer and repeats the question. Again, there's no response, so he moves right to his wife's shoulder and asks, "What's for dinner, dear?" At this, his wife turns around angrily and says, "For the 3rd time, sausages." 4 Catholic women are sitting in a cafe sipping their tea, talking about their great sons. Soon it begins as a contest to see who has the best son. The first woman proudly declares, "My son is a priest. When he walks into a room, people call him Father." The second woman replies even more proudly, "My son is a bishop. When he walks into a room, people call him My Grace." The third woman, thinking she wins, replies, "My son is a cardinal. When he walks into a room, people say, My Eminence." The fourth woman says nothing but sips her tea quietly. The 3 women stare at her, and then ask her what is so special about her son. With a smug look on her face, she replies, "My son is a 6 feet 5 inches muscular man, with a chiseled jaw and arms as big as pipes. And when he walks into a room, all the women say, Oh my God." A man was leaving a cafe when he noticed an unusual funeral. A funeral coffin was followed by a second one. Behind the second coffin was a solitary man walking with a black dog. Behind him was a queue of 200 men walking in a single line. The man couldn't stand his curiosity. He approached the man walking with the dog. "I am so sorry to disturb you, but I've never seen a funeral like this with so many of you walking in a single line. Whose funeral is it?" The man replied, "That first coffin is for my wife." "What happened to her?" "My dog attacked and killed her." "Well, who is in the second coffin?" "My mother-in-law. She was trying to help my wife when the dog attacked and killed her also." A thoughtful moment of silence passes between the 2 men. Then the man asks in excitement, "Can I borrow the dog?" The man replied, "Join the queue." A man takes his wife to get tested. Several days go by, and he receives a call from the doctor. The doctor tells him, "Due to an unfortunate mix-up with the lab, we are not sure if your wife has COVID-19 or Alzheimer." The man, clearly frustrated, asks, "Well, what am I supposed to do with that kind of information?" The doctor calmly suggests, "I recommend you take her for a very long walk and leave her. If she comes home, don't let her in."